Hey, welcome to the United We Scan podcast. Just a quick disclaimer here that any of the views and opinions expressed by the individuals are not that of the USPS or the NRLCA. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and if you are in need of any assistance, please contact your designated union representative. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 135. We're kind of going to touch on the life of an RCA. Kind of put the call out a little last minute to see if we had any leave replacements that wanted to hop on and join us. And I shouldn't just say life of an RCA, it should be leave replacement in general because there's a lot more PTFs out there than there was when I first started. So in that matters, how was your week, Josh?
Uh, it was another week. It's a very short week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I took off had the rotating Friday, Saturday K days. So I had this weekend. I told them I needed to take this weekend for one, to try and get a car, and two, it's my anniversary this weekend. So, and I'm still without a car. So it is what it is, but I have an appointment to look at something tomorrow evening after work. How was your week?
My week was okay. Trying to think of what really went on this week. Oh, I jinxed myself with my mattress and my yeah, my mattress had the check engine light come on and some airbag sensor thing issue with it, so I had to write it back up the day after we recorded that episode. I was so mad. But they gave me another mattress, so it was fine. I would have driven an LOV too. It is what it is, as long as mine gets fixed. Um, Kind of spent nights working on my dispute still and wanting to pull my hair out a little bit. Wasn't able to find enough time to put me back to 46, but got myself a little bit closer, so when I activate addresses and the grow as you go, hopefully my disputes get settled how I want, and I'm able to kick it back to the 46-hour mark. But I was able to uh, enter all of my return to DU time in, and it was absolutely kind of crazy and insane. But I found that I was shorted due to scans being messed up. So the zeros brought me down a little bit, but uh, yeah, so that was kind of my big focus this week, and had advos, and yeah, that was kind of it. But how was your week, Kristen?
Long? This is the first time I've worked 6 days in a while, and being my first week back after being off for 2 weeks, yeah, it hurt. It hurt. I got my mapping done Thursday. I didn't have any changes for October, which is rare for me, but hey, it's all good. And other than that, yeah, it was a week. I have what are we in October? So we get M Sparks Advos once a month, and normally they're dated usually for the last Tuesday of the month. They normally come in on Saturdays. We've had a few months where they didn't come. They came in on Monday or whatnot. I have delivered them every month this year, which is rather kind of like, isn't that what the sub's supposed to do on Saturdays when they work? No, no, I got them yesterday. So that what would have been a really quick day yesterday with only a half a tray of pull down and just under 2 trays of DPS and only 144 scans turned into a 10-hour day. Yeah, it was great. Not really, but actually not a 10-hour day. It was closer to about 9.5. So I was just over evaluation by a little bit, but I'm not going to complain. But yeah, I know what you're talking about with that 46, man. I worked my tail off the last 6 months to make sure my route went back up to that sweet spot on that 46 because we don't want it any bigger, and well, we all hate losing money. So, and I'm at that time of year where it's like, all right, what boxes am I going to deactivate? And I'm going to start doing it as I have one to activate. We'll deactivate that one because I only hit that 46 mark by 3 minutes. So, yeah, that's pretty much been pretty uneventful week. Other than I'm just tired as all get out because I said it's been a while since I worked 6 days, and I think I'm probably much going to be working 6 days a week through Christmas, but oh well, it's money. So on that note, yes, go ahead, Josh.
You guys get your red plums or marriage mail on Saturdays and have to take it out on Saturday? That sucks.
Yeah, we get M
Regardless of when
Sparks,
it
not
comes
red
in, but
plums, but yes, everything that comes in for that day comes in that day, goes out that day in my office. Doesn't matter what the deliver by day or the deliver date is on it. If it comes in that day, it goes out that day.
okay. Because ours are always Tuesday, Wednesday delivery.
Yeah, ours say deliver Tuesday, Wednesday, but they
Yeah.
come in on Saturday, they go out on Saturday.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and mine are we have M Sparks also, and the date on them does say delivered Tuesday or Wednesday, but it will specifically have the date of that month, but it's up to my manager. Sometimes they're like we have to get it out Saturday. Other times they make us hold it till Tuesday. So it just and I just go
Have
by what they say, or they say
you
like
guys
you can take it over a couple different days, and that's what I did.
Yeah,
have
I
you
thought
guys
about it. I was just kind of like, but I don't want to deal with it on Monday, so we're just going to deliver these and get her done.
do you guys have a barcode that you have to scan for them? A delivery
Yes.
scan?
Yeah, we have it taped at every case.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do too.
Mm-hmm. And management usually goes and reminds everybody, and as she was reminding everybody on Saturday, I'm like, yeah, no, I already done that. I did it when I entered it into the scanner under the flats walking sequence, because ours are addressed, because we don't get the cards with our M Sparks, so ours have addresses on them. So as I entered it into the scanner, and then I
Yeah, ours
scanned the
do too.
code and was done.
Most of the time ours are addressed. Sometimes we get the card separate.
Yeah, no, we rarely ever. If anybody gets the cards in my office, it's usually during the city side. We did have one
Yeah.
route that didn't get any of their M Sparks yesterday, and which actually was okay because it was my sub running that route, and it was his first time running the route in the full. And that just means the office princess has to deliver them when she comes back Monday. Oh darn. If they show up tomorrow. but but yeah, that's pretty much not a whole lot going on this week, obviously, and I know we're all not so eagerly waiting for the Christmas volume to show up, so it's coming, people. Trust me. All right, so
I
we're
don't
gonna.
want it.
Yeah, I
Yes, it
know.
is.
Oh, none of us really want it. It's just part of the job. So we're gonna get on the topic of leave replacements. So in our leave replacements, we have RCAs and PTFs and an occasional ARC if they have gone through the RCA Academy. And I say
On Saturday.
occasional on Saturdays, yes. Contractually, it says Saturdays. So I know I see a lot with these. I was an RCA for just shy 9 years. To some people that seems a long time. We have two RCAs in my office that both went career in under 2 years, year and a half roughly for both of them. And I've known people that were RCAs for 2 decades.
Yeah.
I
I
kind
would
of.
say we have a mutual friend that
Mm-hmm.
was just like 20 years.
Yeah. Yep. And I see a lot of social media posts of RCAs. I love the ones, yay, finally going regular after 2 years, 3 years, a year and a half. I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I think that's awesome that you get to move up so fast. I mean, some of us that put the time in, I really think that after only being a leave replacement for such a short period of time, you still don't have a full 100% understanding of the job in its entirety. Do you guys agree with me on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah, you don't really get the full experience of RCA life. I mean, there's even the ability for you if you're somebody who's held down a route, on top of, you're an RCA and holding down a route and still having to help. That's really the true RC. Well, bouncing from route to route and um
Well, my last.
yeah, if you've only really done the one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my last Christmas season as an RCA, that last Christmas season before I went regular, I was the only RCA in my office. And so, for some of you that may have been listening longer through can remember when I went regular, it'll only be 2 years in next month. So, I mean, I was the only RCA. I had the aux route. I had a 6-1. I very rarely, I could probably count on one hand how many times I actually ran that primary K route because I was running my little 2.5 hour aux route with every other route in the office 6 days a week because I
Yep.
was it. That was it. But I've also been that RCA who worked 1 day a week for months at a time. And when I transferred into the office that I'm now in, gosh, that was a little over 7 years ago. Wow, I've been there a while. I transferred in on an H route, who at the time the carrier was out on OWCP, had been out for a while. And when I transferred in, it was about 3 weeks after I transferred in, and carrier came back. And I had 2 paychecks that had absolutely no hours on it. In fact, one time I wasn't on the schedule for a couple weeks for a pay period, and my old office needed help for a week, so I went and worked at my old office for a week. Of course, they never asked me to come back after they had to pay my per diem and hotel and plus the mileage at 120 miles one way. But it I think being an RCA for as long as I was, starting out in a little bit bigger office, and I did help a couple of the other smaller offices that were nearby, closer to that office. And then when I transferred in to the office I'm in now, which is a little smaller, I mean, went from a office that had 2 RMPOs with 14 routes, and only 3 of those were government vehicle routes, to an office that had 7 routes and only 1 POV route. So, I mean, big difference between those two. Volume of mail, definitely different between those two, because I remember when I transferred in, everybody's going, man, it's so heavy. And I'm just looking at how much mail there is there. And I'm like, wow, this is a light to an average light day at my old office. Oh, what you guys are talking about?
Right.
So I've kind of experienced a little bit of it all. I mean, I was never a designation 74 by any means, but I was a 79 there at the end. And, I did. I know what it was like to route hop and get done with routes and go help others. I know what it was like to run an aux route with a full route 6 days a week, work 1 day a week, work no days a week, work 7 days a week because my old office had Amazon Sunday come in a year before I transferred out. So I was there during the implementation of Amazon Sunday delivery. So yeah, I think I'm one of those few that's kind of experienced a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit
usually
of
feast or
everything
famine.
when it came to being a leave replacement.
Yeah. Like
The
I
RCA
was never a
sampler platter.
74 or 79, but where they're like, everyone keeps saying congratulations on the pay cut when you go regular
Hmm.
because of the additional, cost of benefits and just not having the overtime anymore. I kind of lucked out because the supervisor we had at the time was trying to maintain all the RCAs to 3-4 days a week. So it wasn't like it was much drop for me. It was kind of just a lateral for me, luckily. Even though I was running the same route for the most part 5 days a week, it was not my primary, so I was not technically holding it down to get the leave earning
Hmm.
at that point in time.
Well, and that's the thing is when I first started as an RCA back the tail end of 2014, it was literally just a week and a half before Christmas when I got hired in. I did my shadow day the day after Christmas, and then did academy with a day off in between. I did 2 days. New Year's Day was in the middle, and then the last 2 days. So it was different then because RCAs didn't have health insurance benefits. RCAs didn't earn leave unless you
Yep.
were a designated 74 or 79 status. I mean,
Yep.
literally, it was completely different than what RCAs have now. I mean, during my time as an RCA, I saw the change with the Obamacare. I hate using that term, but that's what it was. With then having to get health insurance and that being implemented. I never did have the RCA insurance, so I can't comment on what it was when it was United before, and I think it's what Blue Cross Blue Shield Care First or something like that now. But I was
No.
there.
Yeah, I think the newer one's better than the older one, from what I've been
Yeah.
told.
I was around prior to health insurance. I was around prior to annual leave. I literally, so I experienced what it was like before, and then I have experienced it since RCA's got health insurance, since RCA started earning annual leave, which was only not the current contract, but the previous contract when that came into effect. So that was a little bit, and it is a little different because I remember before when the only way you could when you were earning leave as a designated 79 or 74, and then when you if you converted while you were in that leave earning status, you had to be a 78, or not a 78, excuse me, a 79 or a 74. And if you converted from those designations into a regular position, your leave would carry over. Now, as 78s all earn leave, and even as a 79, I earned leave running other routes outside of my aux route. I noticed only the leave that I accrued for running my aux route, so in that 79 code, is what carried over. The sick leave carried over, and just the annual days that I had earned as a 79. The rest of my annual time that I earned running all the other routes in the office, that was paid out. So yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of change in those 9 years as an RCA. I remember when I transferred into my office and they were trying to tell me, "Oh no, RCAs can't take any time off," and I just kind of looked at them and raised my eyebrow. Of course, the postmaster at the time when I first transferred in didn't know that I was a local steward at the time I transferred in, and so I knew what was going on, and I kind of ruffled feathers because I wasn't a steward in that office when I first transferred, obviously, because I was certified for the different office. And then I gave it about 6 months or so, and we held an election, and I got certified. Then they just moved my certification over to that office. And so I ruffled a lot of feathers when I came in because I was more educated than anybody else in that office. I came from an RX test study office, transferred into an office that had never heard of Rex, had no clue what I was talking about. They looked at me like I was an alien with three heads, going, "What the hell are you talking about?" So basically, and that's go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it's so if you're an RCA that's first starting out, I would just recommend at least, like, I know when you first start out, it's overwhelming. You're just trying to figure out how to deliver mail, in that first 6 months. But once you've kind of gotten over that initial shock, I would just strongly advise you to figure out your seniority if you're in a larger office, making sure that the managers at least have that listed for you. You know that your hiring date. You keep all that paperwork from your initial hiring together so that you have that. And then, as an RCA, it's feast or famine. So
Mm-hmm.
you're entitled to the days on your primary, even if it's an H route and you are covering for a regular who's on leave, or a J. That's your home base. And so just make sure that you're established on your home base. And granted, yeah, like Kristen was saying, it's feast or famine. There's going to be, I mean, the last Christmas I worked 80 hours in 1 week, and it was like, yeah, 80 hours, dude, and it was too many, and and you know, it was so loud. Yeah, there's some people who think that the RCA's. I saw a comment on Facebook the other day that days in a row, the RCA's, there is no set time frame, and I know there's districts that try and limit it, but there's some RCA's out there that want to work and they have the ability to do that. um, but if you're a new RCA, at least building that rhythm of knowing your home base is rural route 1 or whatever it is, building that relationship with your regular for that route and communicating with one another, and then communicating with your managers. I know that some people have really crappy managers and it's hard, but establishing a relationship with them, and then also establishing a relationship with your union steward so that if there's issues that arise, or if management, you were off and your regular called in and they didn't call you in, that's an issue. That's your money. That's your home base. So, just try and keep that in mind. I know that it gets really overwhelming when you're an RCA or even PTFs. I mean, you're jumping from route to route a lot of the time. And there's some offices I know that they really are only working that one day, but I know the majority of them are working probably over 40 hours each week. If you're in your first 90 days, you also, or was it no, first 5 pay periods, Josh?
Yep. First 10 weeks,
That you're
5 pay
when you're
periods.
hourly?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's actual
You're hourly.
time worked or evaluation, whichever is higher.
And then I know that a lot of newer RCAs get that shock when they first get that new Form 50 and yes, mister, they get that Form 50 that they were like, why does it say that I'm out of the probationary period? And then they have to figure out the evaluations of the routes. So hold on just 1 second. Sorry, hold on.
Now, basically, yeah,
But
once you come out of your training pay period, and that includes your orientation, your RCA Academy, Shadow Day, all that stuff is included in those first 10 weeks, those first 5 pay periods. So if you get hired in and you go to orientation, and then you're waiting another week for a Shadow Day, and then you got to wait another week or so for RCA Academy, those those count. So by the time you actually, sometimes you've already lost 10 10 weeks. So sometimes you've already lost 2-3 weeks of the hourly pay. So once you start training, that's where, you really have to pay attention. I mean, in management, I wish these managers would stop writing newer RCAs when it comes to how long it takes them out on the routes the first few times by themselves. I mean, you got somebody, especially if they're on a big, heavy route. I mean,
yeah,
you can't expect RCAs, and I'm just saying that as a general, leave replacements in general. You can't expect them to do the job with an evaluation right off the bat. I mean, there's a few that can do that just because they are one of those odd types of persons. I mean, I didn't. I think I was in at least a good 6 months or so before I hit evaluation, and I was on a 47K POV route. And that's the other thing, guys.
and
Go ahead, Josh.
I'm gonna say I've always said it takes at least a good 30 working days
Mm-hmm.
for it to even start to click.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have that, you'll be going, and then all of a sudden one day you get out there and it's like you've been doing it your whole life, and it just clicks and you go through the motions, and next thing you know, you're back by evaluation and you're like, "Whoa, I can do this." As a
Right? Like,
regular, I don't make evaluation every day. I didn't make evaluation yesterday. I didn't make evaluation Monday. It happens. And then there's other days where I'm 2, 3, 4 hours under evaluation. So it kind of evens
yep,
out.
but it evens out over the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a trainer or instructor at one point. He says that this is when I first started, so it might have been during the academy. He's like, there's going to become a point where you're in the case while you're casing, and you're going to be able to envision where that is on the where that address is on the street,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. When you're on the street, little box, you'll be able to envision where in the case it is.
Yeah, I mean, and then everybody learns at different paces, learns in different ways. So some people may catch on a lot quicker. For others, it may take a little bit longer for that light bulb to go off. And I personally feel that's completely acceptable. I'd rather see somebody who it takes them a little bit longer to do a route in general because they're making sure that they're delivering accurately rather than just tossing and going and willy nilly. Because trust me, there's nothing
Yeah,
like going and
I
cleaning up
I I
everybody.
agree with you on that one.
Mm-hmm. And,
But and
and
I'm,
as you get
like
it
you were
down
saying,
and you get the line of travel down, you start learning what boxes are. I was always a landmark person, so if somebody had a specific a mailbox that stuck out or was by, a house or a lake or something that, something that kind of stuck out, I could usually time that by and associate it where it was on the case. And so then I kind of get an idea of where I need to be time wise while I'm on the route.
I also, when I was I remember when I was doing my shadow day and even throughout my training, we drove through like this large area and I was like, who delivers all this? And my regular was like, oh, that's other routes. I don't know which routes. And I, I was told that the academy, there's, the EDDM or the, what is it? USPS.gov, every door direct mailing,
Hmm.
and you can actually look up the zip code and you can scroll over the routes and where they go. And so I started familiarizing myself with other routes, and just at least knowing like that's where they go. Another big thing that when I first started, we didn't do Sunday Amazon either. And then about 6 months into it, we did. And I realized that the Sunday stuff was kind of like, I don't want to call it adventure time, but it
It's
was
willy
like
nilly, that's for sure.
exploring some of these. Yeah, and
it
you're kind of
definitely gave you a
exploring
chance to
some of these
learn
other
other
routes.
territory.
Yeah,
I
and
know.
go, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and at least you're not like having to learn it, within the confines with the mail. You're at least getting familiarized on actual time. Um, but it helps. Yes, baby, I see that. Yes, and so I just encourage people. I know a lot of the newer subs go, well, I don't know if I really want to do Sunday Amazon because they spend time with their families, but I actually really love delivering on Sundays. It seemed a lot more
The women,
relaxed because you weren't on the evaluated time.
Well, not only
luckily at the
that,
time
I
when we,
mean, go ahead, Josh.
I would say, luckily at the time when we got Amazon, I was number one in my station, number four in the whole office, across the city, and we had one of the guys at my station who volunteered 90% of the time. So in the 2.5 years from the time we got Amazon till I went regular, I only had to do Sundays maybe a half dozen times,
Yeah.
and it's easy. I thought it was easy money because you truck up and go.
Oh yeah, I always found delivering whether it was holiday package assistance or, Amazon Sundays or whatever. I mean, to me, just running packages, easy money. Don't get me started on Amazon directions though, because that's just a whole totally another topic. And that's where it
Oh
really
yeah,
helps if you kind of know the area you're working in. Because I saw,
yes.
people get stuck when they're trying to send you down seasonal roads and it's the middle of the winter and they're not kept up. Well, it told me to go that way. No, no. Try.
Well,
I've seen them take gated paths through through somebody's private field. I'm just like, what the heck? I mean, I literally at the
oh,
time,
I've seen.
yeah,
I've experienced in a section it was a section that was a route that I'm not familiar with. It had me go up the street and stop and to deliver a package on the side.
yeah.
Then you keep going up the street and hit a couple of side streets, and then when you're coming back down, it had me stop at the house that I just delivered from on the left side to deliver a package on the left side where I'd stop to walk across the street
Yep.
because I didn't know that route and the number scheme. It didn't help. So I'm like, son of a. Did either of the two you want to address the two questions
Yes.
in the chat?
All right. So, as an RCA, I will touch on the matrix and that stuff. So, real quick, because I've always been a stickler for it. As an RCA, every office not only should have a seniority list posted, but they should also have a matrix. A matrix, your first basically is your list of all your RCAs, your first routes, everybody's primaries. And then if it's done correctly, they're supposed to go by seniority and have you pick out a second and a third, or you could do 2 seconds or 2 thirds. That's your personal choice depending on what's open. I know when I was just on the K route prior to going to the Aux route, and I had the 2 J routes in my office were every other Saturday. My K route was a Monday relief day. So I had those 2 J routes both as my second. So I worked every Monday and every Saturday, just depending on who had the first or the second Saturday of the pay week as the J route. And then basically what that matrix is for is, again, that's for your order of consideration and covering the route when needed. So your assigned route is always your first route. That is your number one responsibility. Those hours are yours, number one. There are other circumstances that we'll get into in a minute, but your assigned route is your route. Then you have the second route and a third route, or 2 seconds, 2 thirds, however it works out. So if the leave replacement is not available for their assigned route because they've been previously scheduled on another route or on approved leave or whatever the circumstances are, then and this is going with no PTFs in the office, we're just going RCAs at the moment. And so that person that is second would be the next person to be called for that route, which is the second on the matrix. And then if they're not available because they're scheduled or whatnot, then it would go to the third. Now with PTFs, it's a little different. They can utilize a PTF prior to utilizing the second or thirds. Sorry. But in general, for RCAs, matrix should always be done. Technically, it should be updated. Management should be updating it anytime there's a change in RCAs, whether they go regular, they go PTF, or they decide to move on and seek other employment, whether willingly or unwillingly. But or you have new RCAs coming in, that is when it should be updated. However, it's not always done, and a lot of times it's left up to management's discretion. So make sure you have a matrix in your office. Have that discussion with management. If it's not up to date, they don't want to update it. You have RCAs that aren't not. You have RCAs in the office that are not on the matrix. You have RCAs on the matrix that are no longer RCAs, and management doesn't want to touch it. Well, that's when you get in touch with your steward and let them know. But you should have the matrix, and the seniority list should always be on. Those both should be posted somewhere visible that you can see. You want to add to any of that, Meow?
Yeah, the other part I was going to add is that management cannot change. Okay, we'll watch the credits. Management cannot change your primary just willy-nilly. The only time that you can change your primary is if, that route lost their leave replacement. They either got fired, quit, or went regular. And then that vacancy is supposed to be offered at the time of initial vacancy. So, Jimmy went regular in this pay period, right? And so then management can offer that as a primary up for everybody by seniority. If management's just willy-nilly taking your primary away, that's concerning. So just I've seen that happen more recently, which is bizarre. And I just if that's an issue, make sure you call your steward, because that's your home base, like I was saying earlier. The other part is that the secondaries and the tertiaries aren't supposed to also be changed unless your secondary or your tertiary ended up becoming your primary. Even if your secondary or your tertiary got a new sub assigned to it, that's the regular might be on leave, and then that sub would need a day off, so then you'd be working it for the sub's day off. There's different scheduling rules. And a lot of this information that we're kind of talking about for that part is in Article 30.2. Article 30.2 for the RCAs is your best friend for working rules. So I would familiarize yourself with that. The other thing that the management has is called, and the union has it too, is called the order of consideration. for scheduling subs on routes. And so you would have the primary sub, and then you could go to a PTF, and then you could go to a secondary or tertiary, and then any other qualified sub in the office, and then they can go to what is after a sub within 50 miles, and then they could
Well,
go
at
relief day
their option,
worklet.
they can bring in a sub from another office up to 50 miles, or they can
Well,
go
it's not at
by.
their option. That's yeah.
Well, it says may. They may
Yeah.
so makes it at their option,
And
and
if
then they
you're
would get
So
workday relief list, then volunteers,
volunteer
seniority
by
down,
seniority, force by juniority.
right. And for the second part of your question in regards to with the matrix and subs covering, if it is your primary route, your sub of record, they cannot pull you off the route just because you're going to overtime. You're entitled to
Route
the evaluation for the 5 days. It's at management's discretion. If they give you a relief day, it does not have to be the same
Or
relief day as the regular. If it's your secondary or tertiary, they can cap you at 40 hours for the week.
but if management's allowing for others to go over 40 on their secondary and tertiaries, that's a whole nother issue. So
That's a whole other issue.
And-
That's a conversation.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Or
for
like
your
if they're
have a
pulling an
steward over that.
pulling a leave replacement in for another office because they think you might go into overtime. Yeah, no. You're entitled to your hours at your office first.
Yep.
Trust me, we've had issues
other
with that in the past.
Yeah. The other thing that I would encourage that I was going to add earlier, sorry, I'm going back and forth and stuff too, but you should always familiarize yourself with the evaluation of your route, the weekly and the daily. More so the daily as an RCA. Okay, baby.
There should
And
be,
then when you Yes, dude.
I was going to say there should be a 4241A in the route book at the case that does not have the salary and stuff. It's blank when it comes to the salaries of the regulars. So that will give you kind of the weekly breakdown of your route and for time wise.
Well, you can even simply just all you need to do is look at the 4240, and it's up there on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll say like, hey, that such and such RCA is assigned to this route. That's silly. And then it'll say the weekly hours, the time standard, and the daily hours. And I actually kept I kept a little mini notebook for myself, but I also kept notes at my phone. One of the very first things that was told to me is make sure you keep copies of everything that you give to management,
Mm-hmm.
like your green cards. And what I would do is I would write down, more so when I started doing a bunch of other routes, I would write down the date that I did that route, and then I would write like, this is how long it took me, and then this is the evaluation of that route, so that you knew, you were familiarized with, oh, okay, this is a 9 hour a day route instead of the HJK parts of it. But if you familiarize yourself with the difference between the HJs and Ks, that'll also help you, because typically the H and the J routes are evaluated lower for the 5.5 and 6 day delivery, and your K routes are going to be your larger routes. So
Right. Well,
just remember to kind of look at that.
basically the HJK is just tells you how many days off you get in a week. H, you work 12 of 12 days in the pay period. J, you work 11 of 12. K, work 10 of 12.
So yeah, so when you're going in, when
The
you get
evaluation 45J, 45H, 45K is still 45 hours a week, whether it's 5, 6, or 5.5. And the reason we say it's listed as half is because you work 5 one week, 6 the next.
And that's the one thing you should, especially first thing you should familiarize yourself with, is because when you get hired in for a route, and they may tell you it's a 45J or a 45H or a 45K. It's that number, or excuse me, that letter after that route's evaluation for the week that's going to decide how many days a week are you going to work. Are you being assigned to an H route? Well, now you're only guaranteed, you're not guaranteed any hours for a pay period, technically, unless that regular takes days off. A J route, you're
Yep.
only going to be guaranteed 1 day in a pay period, unless the regular carrier takes additional days off. And for a K route, you're only going to be guaranteed that 1 day a week. And that's what
Yep.
you kind of really have to base off. That's why you hear those of us that were around for quite a while, it's feast or famine. Because, I can remember making only $13,000 for the year as an RCA. Or my last year as an RCA making nearly 50 because I was working all the time. So yeah, that's when we mean why it's feast or famine. You're either working till you can't see straight and you can hardly move because you're so exhausted, or you're working the bare minimum. And that's really how the job is. You're being hired to be just that, a leave replacement. You are working when the regular is unable to work, whether it's their relief day, it's vacation, sick, OWCP, maybe they're a full-time union employee or a part-time union employee, so they're off, a little bit more because of that. That is really the job. Is it's the foot in the door to fill in when the regular is not on the route.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people have a bit of a misconception on that. And the other big one, which I know we have an issue with our office, and I really wish I'm not going to get into that one, but and it kind of covers what we talked about last time with delivery vehicles. In the job description for an RCA, and I think a PTF, I haven't seen an outside posting for a PTF personally, but it does say that you are required to have a personal vehicle that you can deliver mail out of. That doesn't necessarily mean that your office has POV routes. You may get sent to an office that only has POV routes, and you're not going to have a government vehicle to deliver out of like you would do your office. You may have to use your personal vehicle for parcel assistance and be delivering packages out of your personal vehicle. That is a job requirement that I know has not changed, even though there's gray
Or
areas in it. Go ahead, Josh.
auxiliary assistants to deliver the mail.
Yes. I have delivered mail out of a POV on government vehicle routes. It happens.
And it's actually in the PO 603. I don't recall the exact wording, but it's to the effect of, unless you are a regular carrier assigned to a route that has a government vehicle, you are required to have a POV that you can deliver the daily volume.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that doesn't mean you have to go
there was a
by.
Christmas that I worked.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's that?
There was a Christmas that I worked that they decided they were going to try and manage the regulars overtime when I was an RCA. And it was like we had gotten Amazon. So they had all the subs scheduled. And if you're scheduled as an RCA and you're just scheduled as auxiliary assistants, you're entitled to 2 hours. So keep that in mind. Don't let management, even if management sends you home, they still got to pay you for 2 hours. But management had us use our POVs to deliver parcels for the regulars during Christmas overtime.
Oh,
now, it only kind of worked, but
well, not only parcels.
was
I
like
mean,
something.
I remember coming in and having to take an hour or two off of a route, and it'd be a route that I'd never seen before. Just to keep the regulars' hours down.
When I first started, just starting on Wednesday, they'd have RCAs scheduled to come in and case one route and then carry a different route. And the route that you were casing, they told the regular not to come in until 11 a.m. And the route you were carrying, they told the regular he had to be off the clock by 11 or 12. Or what, his projected time to go over was. And yes, we're about to go into the Christmas overtime starting, would we say it was December 6th was that first Saturday?
Yep. There was a...
Yeah.
You are not...
Yeah, they just
you are
put it
not...
out.
If you go over your evaluation, you get overtime. You are not entitled to it. It can take you off the clock at your evaluation. They have to pay you for your full evaluation for the week if they throw you earlier. But
Well, yeah, that's
you
for
are-
regulars though.
yes,
Yeah, we're not talking about regulars.
We're in the
today.
RCA vein.
right.
And so, and the biggest difference between an RCA and a PTF, so let's talk about this real quick, is the fact that a PTF is basically an RCA with career benefits. You are considered a career employee as a PTF, but you are still a leave replacement. And again, the difference is a PTF does not have an assigned primary. They have a string of routes that they are assigned between 2 and 5, depending on the size of the office and how many PTFs you have. And it's for K routes, and it falls into formula offices. The formula is for K routes. J's and H's aren't included in the formulas, but you may have a PTF that has to cover a J or an H if it's a day that they're not scheduled on one of their assigned string routes and coverage is needed. They can cover them if there's not an RCA available for those routes. But that is really the biggest difference between an RCA and a PTF is the PTF is a career position. So you get the career insurance, you earn annual and sick leave, and you are, depending on how many PTFs you have and the seniority of the PTFs, since PTFs are already career, that senior PTF will automatically convert to a regular when an opening becomes available. RCAs do have to bid on PTF positions. And under the current contract, that's where things have changed, because in the past, RCAs had to wait 1 year to be eligible to bid the first time around, regardless, whether it was a full-time position, a full route going regular, or for a PTF. Now, under the current contract that we have now, which I'm hearing there's still some issues with the bidding system with this, but again, I haven't worked in an office with PTFs, so that one is kind of out of my forte. But it is now 90 work days or 180 days, 6 months, is what your probation is now. It's no longer the 90 work days and one calendar year. It's the 90 work days or 180 days, aka 6 months. Once you have completed your probation, you are now eligible to bid on a PTF position. You still have to wait the full calendar year to bid on a regular position. However, with that,
I
though,
also when I was,
go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish your string of thought.
However, with that, but that does lead you into, if you were an RCA, because I saw somebody comment on here, and I don't have the timeline right half, but let's say you get hired on January 1st. Your 90 work days, 6 months, whichever comes first. So here you are, June 1st, PTF position comes up, and you bid on it because, well, all the other RCAs in your office are newer than you are, and they can't. And you win that PTF position. So now your career after 6 months. Well, then Sally over on Route 7 decides that she's going to retire 2 months later. Well, now here you are, 8 months in, and now you're going full time because you're the only PTF in that office, and you automatically convert to regular.
Yep.
So it is a faster track to career for RCAs, which is great for in those offices that have PTFs. It does allow you to move into career quicker.
Yeah, and I'm the thing, because my office, we have PTFs now, but when I went regular from RCA to a regular. We didn't have them then. Okay, dudes. So I would always, and this was told to me by numerous different stewards. Yes, I do. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry, guys. He's giving me a brown piece of a brownie. So, you're silly. So when I was an RCA, I had multiple union stewards tell me to make sure that you familiarize yourself with where the job postings for roll carriers are, especially if you're if your office has a lot of high turnover, then you need to be watching and seeing, because the timeline now for the postings is less time than it was before. So
Yes.
you might miss it. So, and management doesn't have an obligation to print it and hand it over to everybody unless there's a grievance settlement about it. There should be a designated location in your office that has the job postings posted there. Now, I've had it where there was RCAs in my office and they bid to a district-wide posting to go regular in another office, and they never withdrew the bid, and they have to go. It's either you go or you quit.
Mm-hmm.
So just whenever you get familiarize yourself with the bidding system, go on to Light Blue. It's under eJob bidding, and at least set yourself up on there so that when the time comes for you to have to bid, you're comfortable with it, and you have an understanding of it. On the NRLCA website, under job bidding, there's a whole document that explains the bidding system a little bit more in depth than I could. I'm more visual with it. But I started bidding on positions a year after I became an RCA, just so that there might be the senior RCA might not bid,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Or
did.
not bid correctly.
You jump.
Well, you
Yeah.
may have those RCAs that are an RCA later in life, because we had one in my old office who was an RCA later in life because he had been a private business owner for so long he didn't have the Social Security benefits built up. And so that's what he was doing to help build up his Social Security. He had no intention of going regular, so he didn't need to bid on anything. He didn't want to bid on anything.
Right.
See, and that's the difference with as an RCA. If if you have one of those nice little aux routes that are 35, 36 hours, it works perfect for you. You don't want, to go regular, whatever reasons, it's just, and you have one of those nice little offices that you don't have to worry about running Bobby, Joe, Sally's, and Kevin's routes when you're done, or helping, that's maybe just fine for you, because that maybe just work out with your at-home schedule, or it might be a post-retirement job and you don't want to go regular. As an RCA, you also have that capability of not wanting to go regular, and you don't have to bid. You don't lose your seniority as an RCA. Now, but a PTF, well, you don't have a choice. If a regular route opens up and you're the next in line as a PTF, you have to take it because you're already career. Now, going back on to the bidding real quick, because I want to touch on this. There is times where an RCA can bid on a regular route under the 1 year as long as they're out of probation. Now, this is a scenario, so it gets posted in the office. There is nobody in that office with 1 year in that could be eligible to bid on that regular route. It goes to district. Nobody within the district wants to bid on this route. And then it'll come back to the office for those of you that are out of probation. So that is the only other way that you could get onto be a regular carrier under the 1 year out of probation, is if it goes to district and then comes back into office. RCAs and their rights on aux routes. All right. That one we can touch on real quick. I was a Designation 79, which is an RCA assigned to an aux route. So you're as an aux route, if an aux route becomes available, it will then get offered by seniority to the RCAs. PTFs cannot hold down an aux route. So, to RCAs, if an aux route in your office becomes available, they're supposed to offer it by seniority, just like they were any other vacant leave replacement position gets offered by seniority. And you decide I'll take that aux route because then that'll be my route. All right, after 90 calendar days is when your designation code is supposed to change. It does not change automatically. So if you're on this route, you get that Form 50 that says that, you've been changed to this route, and go ahead and mark the day that you start on that route. Keep track of it. And as that 90 days comes up, remind management, because on that 91st day, management has to go in and change your designation code. On that 91st day, then, your designation code then goes to effect as a 79. You then earn sick leave, and it is backdated from the day you took the aux route over. Now, the responsibilities with the aux route, that is your route first. If you are in a formula office, aux routes are 6 days a week. If you are in a non-formula office, you have the choice of doing either 6 days or a 5-in-1. What that means is that aux route is 5 days a week for you, and then you can still retain a primary route, whether it's a J or a K. We have one right now who went 5-in-1 with his J route. Just putting that out there. So then that you would still be responsible for that primary route when that regular carrier is either on their relief day, on vacation, or whatnot. And then they can usually have another RCA, if they're available, run the aux route. Evaluations pending, depending on the size of the two routes. You could run both if needed. I mean, I did it all the time, but that's a different story. Still falls under the 12 hours.
Right. And I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe you are allowed to sign 7 4240s in a week as an RCA on an aux route.
I've never heard that.
I've never heard that either.
That's the thing.
Because I've had some that were signing 2 a day.
I signed 2 a day.
But I'm just saying, I don't know, I haven't seen anything document-wise, but I know you can sign, as long as it's less than a 12-hour scheduled, and it was, well, back then we actually had coverage, so you were only doing the aux route and your primary.
Yeah. So, but also responsibilities of having an aux route or even being a designated 74. Designation 74. So, let's say I'm Meow sub. Meow decide something happens, whether she gets hurt at work or say she gets a full-time union position and she is no longer carrying her route every day. That is now the responsibility of me as her primary sub. I am now carrying that route every day. After 90 calendar days, again, you've got to remind management, it's not automatic. Then you would become a designated 74 that 91st day. Same thing with the 79s. You would then earn sick leave, and it will retro back to the day you took that route over. Now, the responsibilities with these 2 designation codes also include your route maintenance, your edit books, as well as case labels, of course, forwards, holds, everything that a regular would do on their route. You are now the informal regular on that route,
Mapping.
so to say. Yeah, mapping too. I mean, yeah, it's, you are the one in charge of that route. And that's why I've always said from the very beginning, and the way I train RCAs is, I try to train them with everything. You're not only the mapping, you're now responsible for that route's evaluation. Your rec scans, your daily rec scans when you're out on the route, your trip to your doors, your authorized dismounts, your unscannable parcels, your end of shift duties, that all that stuff, plus keeping up the edit book, keeping up the cases, your holds, your forwards, that's really, you are the person in charge of all that, as if that's your own route. And that's the one thing I try to do when I train new RCAs is I'm going to train them. Of course, you can't do it all in 3 days, 4 days, 24 hours, whatever they're trying to enforce. You're not going to
training hours.
Yeah, your training hours with whoever's training you should be an OJI, but a lot of offices don't have them. So, I try to train them to be familiar with the stuff, and I coach them through even afterwards. When you get your advos for the month, the week, or however, we get M Sparks, we got them Saturday. Hey, make sure you're putting it in the scanner correctly. I try to get them that way. They know when they go regular or they go on a hold down as on their primary route, or they take an aux route over, they're at least somewhat familiar with the responsibilities that they're going to have to do that involves the upkeep of the route. And that's why it's important for RCAs when you're first starting to pay attention to that. because that is your pay as well as that regular. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're doing everything correctly.
I would say the only thing I would change in your scenario there is before that 90 days, management should ask you, do you want to hold on to your ox route or do you want to switch to the your primary as the hold down?
I wasn't even talking about that at the moment, but yes. In the event, if you're on an aux route and you're a designated 79 and you're doing a 5-in-1 because you're in a non-formula office, so you have a primary full route as well as your aux route that you're responsible for covering. And your regular route, the regular carrier on your full route now is unable to carry the route for whatever reasons it may be. And you are covering that route daily. When you get to that 90th day, yes, you are going to have to make a decision. Do I stay with this route as a designation 74? Or do I relinquish this route and go back to just my aux route and stay a 79? You can't do both.
The other thing I wanted to add with that is that if you are, holding down a route, or if you're on the aux, if you're one of those designation codes, the ones that, if your office does Sunday Amazon or Sunday delivery, the people that are holding down a full size route, even in that first initial 90-day pay period that they know it's going to exceed over 90 days and they're holding that, then they are supposed to be bypassed in the rotation for working on Sundays. But the aux route carriers are supposed to be a part of the rotation because you may only be on like a 4-hour aux route. And there's some RCAs that want to work, but in my experience with it, they don't. I've tried to do different resolutions to change that, but so that's a little bit controversial there. But the update in the RCAM was that the Sunday people, the ones holding down a full size route, would be bypassed. Now, let's say that management didn't have enough volunteers, didn't have enough subs to work at all, and then they had to work them. Then after that point is when they could even utilize regulars per that MOU. So that's
also on an aux route, they can, after you complete your aux route, they can send you out to do any other type of assistance, whether it's going to rescue another RCA, or if a regular has a breakdown and there's no other coverage, they could have you go out and do that. They could have you run parcels that a regular may have had for a second trip. They can do all that up to 12 hours a day. So even if, on an aux route, they can still utilize you as needed after you complete your aux route for the day.
Yeah, and it's Article 30.2.Q, additional duties. Leave replacements may be required to perform duties in addition to the route assignment, such as auxiliary assistance on other routes, priority mail express duties, etc. When performing additional duties, the leave replacement will receive compensation at the hourly rate in addition to the daily evaluated hours for the assigned route.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that it's like we said earlier, feast or famine. It could also work out in your favor. Let's say that you're only you're going to stay under 40 hours for the week, and all the evals that you have combined are only going to be about 28 hours, and you finished your primary in 6 hours, and now you're going to go do 2.5 hours of aux help or green card time. Now you're going to boost your pay up a little bit more, even though you didn't work that much. So that kind of works in your favor with the incentive system of the evaluation. And I'm not saying, slow down or, work at your pace that you're going to what's safe for you and be thorough in your job. But, there was one guy, he was staying at like 30 hours a week, working 6 days a week. And then he would work like, I don't know, like 15 hours, or no, it wasn't 30. I can't remember. He would stay under 40 hours, but he had more green card time than the evals. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just, it was crazy. Like, granted, it's not paid at overtime, but he was at least like, he was making a little bit more with that. So, I
Right.
don't really
Also,
see that as the case anymore
In your
because,
example of, let's say they work the route, and let's say it's a 45, 9 hours a day, they're still getting paid that 9 hours each day they ran
yes,
that route.
yeah.
RCAs, if you were assigned a regular route for the day, they cannot send you to another office after you have completed that regular route. If you are on an aux route, however, and another office needs some assistance, they can send you, but not if you're scheduled
And
on a regular route.
just keep in mind that 12-hour
Yes.
um it's your call, you know. You're the one who knows what's safe for you, and um I it's I we had a route that was an aux route that first RX evaluation came out and it dropped it from like 41 hours down to 35, or no, it was 20, I don't remember. It was like super low, and he finally got it built back up and it was almost a full size route, and they would send him to another office and he would just oh, it sucks. That's like one of the disadvantages of the aux route part, but I
And
think
what we
personally
go ahead.
I do think that there's a lot more advantages of being on an aux route than there disadvantages. Um, but take it or leave it.
And another office means not necessarily. So if you're in an office where you have RMPOs, and so your postmaster has the main office and then one or two or three other little offices outside of that too, they can send you even after a full route, as long as it's within the 12 hours. They can send you to any other underneath that one postmaster's umbrella. They just cannot send you to an office with a different postmaster. I just want to clarify that too.
Yes. Yep. I'd get sent to the main office at 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, walk in and be like, they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I've already done mine. Here I am.
Right, right.
Delusional RCA life, man.
Oh, I know. It's
Yep.
like, well, when you get done with
You
that
got
route, I need you to come back here and run and do this. Yeah, I've been there, done that. I even had where I was off. I had volunteered to go run an aux route in a neighboring office, and I get up to that office and I go, oh yeah, you need to go back to your office when you get done with this route and go do something else. Are you kidding me? Okay. Something like that. So yeah, they can do that if it's within the 12 hours. And honestly, guys, if you're in one of those famine offices to where, the unicorn offices anymore, to where you're only getting 1 or 2 days a week, reach out to other offices if they're nearby, if you wish to get more hours. I mean, I did. I had a whole summer where I ran. There was two routes in that office that was north of me, and I ran both those routes all summer long to get hours. I knew both the carriers pretty good. The one was an aux route. It was like a 35, 36 hour aux route. The other one was like a 41K in the summer and dropped down to a J in the winter because it's a seasonal area. And I literally could just like, hey, I need some hours. And I'm like, all right, if you want to work, I'll take the day off. Or, hey, I'm not scheduled the rest of the week. All right, I'll take the rest of the week off. You can run my route. You know, if you know carriers and other offices, it usually really helps. In that instance, I mean, been there, done that.
Yeah, so somebody else asked to, so if you are getting sent, if you're a sub and you're getting sent to another office under the same umbrella of this of your postmaster, um postmaster, and even if you are if you're going to another office within that 50 miles, they are supposed to pay you that postal mileage under like the e-travel.
through e-travel.
Yeah.
And
Which is
sometimes
I try to
and
email.
sometimes depending on your management, especially if it is under your postmaster and you're going from one to the other, a lot of times you can remain on the clock for that travel time too.
Yep.
Yes. But you know,
I
and
would say you should be on the clock for that travel regardless of where you're going,
yep.
which
Sometimes
means,
mine would
yes,
give
that
me a
would fall
mixed
under the
road
12
too.
hours.
Yes, and if you
Like
are
you're
on
gonna
an
have to
aux
take a look
route,
at.
you can be pulled off onto another route as well. Yeah, it's
Management makes the decision to split the aux route, and then instead of
well, we had
of
this situation. Well, even yesterday in my office, our little 2.5 hour aux route. He does a 5 and 1. He was on his primary, the J route yesterday. My sub was on another K route. I was working, and we have two subs left in our office right now. And so the aux route, and knowing that we had the advos, we knew he wasn't going to have time to do both routes. And so what happened is, I don't know who, it could have been the supervisor for all I know, or maybe the H route person. They just went and delivered packages for the aux route. So the whole 92 pieces of mail that the aux route got yesterday is cased up and waiting for him for tomorrow. But yeah, we've split that aux route before. I remember when I was still in RCA, came in off the route, and the other RCA, who we're both regular now, of course, but it was just him and I, and we get back, and the aux route hadn't been delivered yet, and I was like, "Great, it's already 5 o'clock. What's going on?" And he was just wrapping up on the other route. He goes, "I'll meet you out there. We'll split it." And we just laughed because, I mean, it's 10 miles out to the first box. And I'm like, okay, So I grabbed the route. I took it out there. He came up shortly behind me. I met him up. I took through one section. He took the rest. And we got back to the office about the same time. So yeah, it happens where you have to split a 2.5 hour aux route because, well, that's what happens. It's life. I had days as an RCA where I ran that little aux route. I ran it with the 47K, and then I still took a subdivision off of another route that day and was done within 12 hours. I mean, it happens. Of course, I can't say I think it really comes down to people and their work habits, and I'm not going to put it as a generational thing because there are some really good workers out there in the younger generations. But I do notice a difference to where myself and my one good work friend there, my work husband, so to say, we did what we had to do to get the job done. Now, if there was a day that I was scheduled on a route that I didn't know very well, and he was scheduled on a route that he didn't know very well, but we each knew those other routes better than the person assigned to him that day. We just walk in, let's trade. Yeah, let's trade. We let management. I'm running that route now. He's running that route now. Okay, as long as it's covered, it works. We really did work together. I go out and rescue him at the end if he was having a bad day on a different route. We really worked together as RCAs and came together to get it done. And I don't see that as much now. But again, that could just be specific to my office and the people that we have working there now. But you really kind of have to have a relationship, a good working relationship, I should say, with the other leave replacements in the office, because sometimes it's going to come down to, all right, we've got a route or two down. You guys are assigned full routes. We're going to have to split this up 2 or 3 ways. And if you guys know how to split that up, it makes it so much easier than management trying to go in there not knowing what the hell they're looking at and saying, all right, well, you're going to take this part, you're going to take this part, and you can like, no, this part's closer to the route I'm on, and you can do that easier if you guys know the routes and you work together when it comes to getting the coverage and getting the job done for the day.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it all is teamwork. Like I think that there's kind of this division too sometimes that happens between like the RCAs and PTFs and the regulars, and like if you're an RCA or a PTF, just remember like the regulars went through that too. It may not be exactly the same, it may be slightly different experience, but we all need each other to function.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we don't have the subs, then we don't get days off. And so that's why sometimes, I don't know if people get frustrated because it's always us trying to look out more so for the RCAs or even in the new contract, but that's how we got the RCAs to have leave, and there's a lot of different benefit stuff that happens that way, and is it all perfect? No. I mean, there's still working rules that I don't necessarily agree with, and I don't think help the morale of the RCAs. Um, but they are what they are, and that's why you go to union meetings, you try and change some of those working rules, but um, really familiarize yourself with that's Article 30.2 is most of those RCA and PTF working rules, especially with scheduling. The other thing there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, that if you should also make sure, and I think that this is getting corrected a lot more than what it used to be. Make sure that if you're an RCA or a PTF, RCA, especially if you're a designation 79, that your Form 50 that you get in the mail says the correct route that you are assigned to on
Yes.
it. Um, because if it doesn't say the correct route and then you end up becoming, a different designation code, it's harder for it takes longer. So if management, you just go up to management and ask them, hey, can you send in a request to change my Form 50 so that it says that this is my primary, and then it'll show up a little bit easier. It's just
Also,
an administrative thing, but
yeah,
yeah.
definitely, because that could definitely, especially, if you initially got hired in and you got hired in for Route 12, and but then they decided to change it and put you on Route 3 instead, but they never changed it in the system, it's still going to show that you're assigned to Route 12. And if you have a grievance because they didn't call you in, they called in Joe Bob to cover your route instead of you for Route 3, and you go to file a grievance on that because you should have been called because that's your primary route, but your Form 50 says that your primary is Route 12. Yeah, that not good. So that's important, to
Well,
making sure administratively wise that your Form 50 is correct. And if by chance, if you can't find that paper copy you get in the mail, I do suggest you have a folder for those, secure place, put them away. You can access them on Light Blue through EOPF, and all your personnel file stuff is all right there as well. And I was going to say
Yeah,
one
it's
more
really
thing,
and
and where did it go? Because then I got sidetracked.
well, while you're thinking about it, I want to say I've also seen in that same situation with the Form 50 being not correct, where someone was holding down a route because the regular was off
Hmm.
for the route that local management, the supervisor or manager told them this is going to be your sub of record.
And they didn't change it
And
properly in
then,
the system.
which means they never got switched to the designation code 74
yeah.
to
Yep.
start, accruing leave.
Also, as RCAs, PTFs, leave replacements in general, if you are a member of the union, you can be a local steward. You can be an area steward. You can be a local officer. You can be a state officer. And there's nothing saying that you can't run for the national board. I'm just saying, as an RCA, as a PTF, you can put yourself out there. You can be a delegate for national convention. You can be a delegate for your state convention. I mean, I remember being on a local board out of my old local. Our whole entire board, all four positions, were RCAs for a year or two. We currently have an RCA on our state board, which is in the position that is a full-time position. We just had an RCA elected this at our most recent state convention back in June to be our state secretary. It is possible. I ran for national office as an RCA. I'm not going to deny that. There's nothing out there that says you can't do those things. I mean, several of us in the past, and there's several of them that were, I was a steward as an RCA in two different offices. You can do it. I know PTFs that are area stewards. If you are serious about the job and you want to be more involved, there are those things that you can do as well as a leave replacement.
Sorry, I'm all typing. The thing I was also going to say, somebody asked in the chat, when can they, uh, how often do subs get a chance to change their routes on the matrix? And I kind of briefly talked about it earlier. If a route becomes vacant, due to the sub going regular, they quit, something along those lines. It's supposed to be offered at the time of the initial vacancy by seniority to all available qualified subs. If a sub is injured, they cannot move, I believe. I'm trying to think about that.
Yeah,
I
I'd have
think
to
that's
look that one
correct.
up.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second. I think it says to all qualified RCAs at the time of initial vacancy. But the secondaries and the tertiaries would not change unless one of those became their primary, or, like let's say they went PTF. Um, and then typically when a sub is on a aux route, they don't really have the secondaries and tertiaries anymore either. So, but management shouldn't just be willy-nilly changing the matrix either all the
No,
time.
no.
And I've seen that happen, and that was a grievable issue. And if management is smart, or even if you're a I became kind of a record hoarder, I guess, while I was an RCA, and I made sure my primary, secondary, and tertiary, every single matrix they ever posted, that it never changed, right? Because until I actually, um, I ended up becoming a designation 74 and moving from two different routes, and then was holding down one, and then moved to another, and then I went regular on that route. But my secondary and my tertiary always were pretty much the same. And I know somebody kind of briefly talked a little bit about S&DC offices. Um, I personally am not in one, but I've had to deal with a larger post office, with about the same amount of routes as some S&DCs, and I think it's in the smaller offices. It's a little bit easier to manage it. I think, in the sense that you can just go have a conversation with your one manager, and hopefully, everybody usually, there's four role carriers in here, and they can kind of all figure it out. Versus an S&DC, um, they should more so have those things posted and verified, especially because that's how you're going to help retain the RCAs and get a sense of normalcy for them, because they can rely on that. It helps set their schedule. The matrix does a little bit more with their primaries. They're familiarized on some of those routes. What was the other thing I was going to say? I actually used to give some of the newer RCAs this sheet of paper that had like different stewards' phone numbers on it, the manager's office phone numbers, um, both stations, and which routes were in each of the stations, so that if they were scheduled in the other office, they at least knew, oh, okay, I have to go over here. Um, and then the other thing I put on there was, on the way, way bottom, I'd write known routes. And once some of these subs had started accumulating, going to different routes, you can write down like, hey, I've done that route before. If you're a sub that hasn't done a route in over a year, you also get paid hourly or eval, whichever is greater on that too.
And the same for
So,
running a route.
for,
The first time you've run a route in its entirety, or if you have not ran that route in 12 calendar months.
yeah. So just kind of something to keep in mind, because I've had that happen to me like my last year as an RCA. So
Oh yeah, it happens.
yeah, but I think that covered a lot of it. So I'm gonna think of like 20 million things after this that we missed.
Oh, I know,
I'm
right?
like, yeah, yeah, 20 million things about RCA life. I know it is too
Yeah.
many.
I try and forget some of those things.
Yeah,
I'll never
and
forget working.
no, I'll never forget it. And
I
there,
didn't say I will. I just said I tried to.
and
Yeah.
Like
there's
Christmas Eve being out there delivering at 9 o'clock at night.
yeah. I mean, there's days
Yeah.
where I kind of miss still being an RCA, honestly. But if yesterday hadn't been my K day, I I hadn't had M Sparks, I would have been more than happy to volunteer to run the Ox route. It wouldn't have been an issue, More than happy to go run out and run that real quick. And they know, with newer subs, if you got one that's a little behind and there's nobody else available to go help them, and I get back, I have one of those absurdly light days where I'm actually back before 2 o'clock. It don't happen too often anymore, but then, I have no problems running out and helping them. I have no problems helping them with line of travel, especially if they're going on a route that they've never been on before and it's got some squirrely sections. I still tell, guys, hey, call me if you need me. I can at least try and get you through it if I have to. It's RCAs know, even when I was in Italy, they could have texted me and I would have been no problems getting back to them if the time difference wasn't 6 hours. But, I don't, I'm sorry to call you on your day off. No, no, don't be sorry to call me on the day off because you may be newer to my route, and I'm more than happy to walk you through something or explain where something is or where to deliver this package to this business or something like that. That's I think having the
Yeah,
communication
exactly.
with the regular is very important. In my first regular, I learned a lot from. She's the one that taught me the basics on how to do an edit book when when the Rex study offices were doing their very first phase of mapping. She was one of those mapping facilitators that went to other offices. And when she was mapping the route initially, and now this was before Rex was launched across the board, so we were still a test study office, she pulled me and was showing me how the mapping worked. At the time, I was still in RCA. You know, I I follow kind of suit. When I became a regular, I got myself a notebook and I leave it and it's my route logbook. So if there's anything important, like if I haven't seen the RCA in a while or something important because I'm going to be gone, whether it's on vacation or concert festival or conventions or whatnot, and I know there's something important that I need to tell them, I write it in there and I leave like an old parcel marker in that spot to they know, and I'll leave the logbook right on the desk and they know to flip it and read it. And I hope it doesn't always happen, but that way if something happens, new boxes come on or something different while I'm gone, I at least when I walk in, I can open up that logbook and be like, okay, so this address added a box, this address added a box. So I'm not getting back on my route and going, oh wow, that's new, that's new, that's new. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Having that communication, I feel, is always important. Not all the regulars feel that way too, unfortunately. But I think you should have communication as an RCA with at least your primary route for sure. And if you can have that communication with the other routes that you run, it makes it smoother for everybody whenever, when they're off.
Yeah, seriously. I agree with all of that. I had really good communication with my secondary and my tertiary people to the point where like when one of them ended up being injured and I moved to his route because it was just we were all like right there. It's just a team. It's just I felt that way. I think building that camaraderie with them, and there's a lot of things that I still do to this day that I learned from them in the ways that they would do things. I think we covered it all though. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
All right, so we'll go ahead and wind this down. Your final thoughts, Josh?
No, sorry. It's starting to get cooler out there. So be safe. Uh, don't get overwhelmed. If you do, take a step back, take a deep breath, and step back in. Have a good week. Meow. Your final
Well,
thought?
thank you guys for yeah, and sorry I'm on ramble mode because I'm distracted tonight with my little buddy here. But I just want to encourage you guys if you're a regular listening to this, you know, you are no, you're not a butt, you're my buddy. Um I want to encourage if you're a regular listening to this to please share this with an RCA. And thank an RCA or PTF in your office if you only have PTFs because like we were saying, I mean none of us could function without any of them. Um and sometimes like it does get very overwhelming being an RCA, so we all need to look out for each other. We need to build that unity because it's we won't be here without each other. So, try and stay safe and have a good Halloween because that's also coming up. there's going to be a lot of kids out if you're going to be delivering on that night. But just at kids in general and animals running around, and just try and be safe. And yeah, I think that's it. Kristen.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, definitely. Share this. I mean, there's a lot. It's an information overload when you get hired in as an RCA or a PTF. It isn't a lot of information overload for everybody right off the get go. But it is also a job of repetition. So the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it. And once you find your system on running your primary route, you can pretty much take that same system to almost every other route you run. Now it's different. Little, you may have to change your systems up between government vehicles and POVs, or it's a difference in the different types of government vehicles, which we talked about last time. But it is a lot to begin with, and it always seems like it's a lot. But if you take it in stride and you try to learn one new thing as you go, don't be afraid to have that communication with your regulars. Please communicate with your leave replacements. I mean, that makes it easier for everybody across the board. Yep, it is starting to get cooler out there in areas. I know I'm no longer having the other window rolled down, and I'm wearing a hoodie intermittently between hot flashes. But it's definitely coming to be that time of year where some of us may see that dreaded S word sooner than later. So, guys, stay safe, hydrate always. Doesn't matter what time of year, it's drier in the winter, you still need to stay hydrated. And I do want to put it out there because it was a last moment where I pulled saying, hey, if there's any leave replacements that want to come on and talk about their experiences and whatnot, and we didn't solidify anybody. But I did make a little bit of an announcement earlier today in just the Facebook group. If you guys have an experience or a story or something that you wanted to put out there, you want others to hear, so either, they're aware of something or they can learn from something, or you want your voice heard by others that may or may not be listening in higher positions, and you want to come on and talk, please reach out to us, primarily either right here on Discord in the group. You can private message us individually. I still have the private messages turned off on the Facebook page. You can email us, unitedwescandpodcast@gmail.com. You can remain completely anonymous. We don't have to use your name, your location, nothing like that. The only exceptions are if you have signed a social media policy, whether that be steward system, local, state boards. If you have signed a social media policy within any of that, unfortunately, we will have to turn you down. We're not going to put you in jeopardy of losing those positions. And so that is unfortunately our only exception. If you have a story that you want to tell, an experience you don't want to come on, but you want to type it up and email it to us, we'll be more than happy to read it. We'll keep you completely anonymous. Not an issue there. So I just kind of want to put that out for everybody to hear. So it's not last moment. You can reach out to us and however you wish, and we will put things in motion for a future episode. But on that note, guys, we should be back next week, and I'm not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure it out. Something will always come up.
Yeah.
So on that note, guys, have a safe week, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye.